I'm playing Yuck Yucks in Niagara Falls Valentine's Day. This is my friend Joe Warmington. I'm just telling him. I don't want anybody else to hear it. I'm playing Yuck Yucks Valentine's Day in Niagara Falls.
Do you get the romantic suite at that one over the falls?
I would imagine I'll get a diseased heart-shaped bed.
Yeah,
that's what Niagara Falls is, diseased heart-shaped bed. You don't get the good one.
The romance that you're describing is just fantastic, and that's going to bring a lot of people there.
What you're going to have there, girls, is any guy who brings you to Niagara Falls for Valentine's Day, you pretty much know where the cheap bastard's going to take you on your honeymoon.
Do you bring quarters into the room, or is it a credit card now?
I think it's credit card.
Can you get one of those e-cards?
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Today's pretty exciting. We got Tom Quiggin here. Tom is former military intelligence, and would it be fair to call you a terrorism expert?
According to the Federal Court of Canada and the Ontario Superior Court, yeah, I was actually a court expert on terrorism, specifically on jihadist-based terrorism.
What did the Supreme Court say?
Never been there. Don't want to go there.
So nobody appealed the fact that you're a terrorism expert?
A number of people complained quite virulently in the courtroom, but they were overruled by the judge.
Good. Good to hear. Let's talk about the meeting you had yesterday.
Yeah, it was an interesting day. I'm not going to get into it. But there are things happening in the Canadian government right now which most people in Canada don't understand. There are a lot of questions being asked about migration, about border security, this sort of stuff. And what we're starting to discover, it's not just me, it's not just a bunch of other people. There are very senior people in this country who are ex-politicians who are becoming very concerned about the national security efforts of the current Trudeau government, to a point where now I've actually had a number of people call me and say, we want to talk to you. That was one. I had a guy from, not speaking too far out of turn here, but I had a guy from the U.S. Embassy call me up and say, you're going to come in and see us. And I've talked to a couple of other folks, including one other former Liberal cabinet minister who should remain nameless at this point. But just to say there's a lot of discontent in the country with the way Trudeau's running a number of files, especially those related to national security. And this isn't just the normal opposition. It's not, conservatives, blah, 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 liberals, blah, blah, blah. This is going across partisan boundaries where people starting to ask questions about where the hell is our country going, and they're not happy.
It's a funny country. I've had friends for, 40 years from high school. And up until the past year and a half or so, I wouldn't have been able to tell you what their political affiliation was. Now, we're getting more like America. My brother lives in the States, and he told me one of the first things people ask you when you go to a party or their house is, are you a Republican or a Democrat? And now I'm finding a lot of Canadians are doing the same thing with people saying, what are you, a conservative, an NDP, a liberal?
Yeah, or they'll ask a deliberately leading question in order to sound you out, so you have to answer the question the right way. Is Orange Man bad? Yes, he is. Okay, that's good, sort of a thing. I always thought, just as a Canadian, and I was maybe a bit more conscious of my world around me than a lot of folks, but I always thought I won the global lottery by being born in Canada. And then I thought I
think we all felt that way.
Yeah, a lot of people, if you've ever traveled outside of Canada, you look around and go, holy crap, we can complain about what's going on in Canada, but it's nothing compared to what's going on. So when I was in Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia, and Albania during the war over there, one of the things we came to realize very quickly is Yugoslavia wasn't that bad a place. Yeah, it was a soft communist dictatorship. They had food, they had water, they had highways, they had air conditioning in some of their buildings. Life wasn't that bad. And then they literally took the country in a couple of years and went from kind of okay to genocide, rape camps, concentration camps, villages that when you drive through them, they're 3 feet high, because that's what happens to a village when a bunch of 155 rounds come in and flatten it. And what I realized very quickly, well, not quickly, but...
Oh, by the way, I know what a 155 round is.
Heavy artillery, yeah.
Yeah, my grandmother had one.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So I'm following the lingo.
Yeah, okay, so this is what happens to your village when heavy artillery comes in. So
see how much easier that is, Tom?
It is so much better.
See how much simpler that is, and everybody gets it.
Speak normal English, I get it.
You don't get emails on a podcast, but still, I didn't want them.
Yeah. So anyway, one of the things we started to realize after a while is what's going on in Yugoslavia was the politics of identity. The Croatians wanted to go right back to the old stuff from World War II. Right. The Bosnian Muslims were actually led by a guy who was Muslim Brotherhood, Elliot Zbogevich, and he wanted to go hard on Islamist to a point where he brought in the Revolutionary Guard to help them, which is the first time I saw Iranian Revolutionary Guard was there. And then the Bosnian Serbs and the Serbian Serbs were being directed by Milosevic, who wasn't really ideological, but his wife was someone who would have made Trotsky blush. This one was a hardcore communist, and they able to take a country that was kind of okay in 85, 86 after the Sarajevo Olympics, for instance, but by 91, heavy artillery was taking villages down, and it was the voices, it was the politics of identity. So, flash ahead a bit, I come back to Canada after...
So you're saying his wife was nagging him?
Oh, yeah, I mean, he was scary. She was terrifying. And any of the diplomats or our civil affairs guys that talked to him said you could talk reasonably with him,
right?
To a certain degree.
So Milosevic was a tough guy till 5:15 when he got home.
Yeah, and then his wife would come into the meetings, and then everything would go right off the rails. It was bad. Like I never had to deal.
By the way, what were her qualifications to be in the meetings?
The wife of the leader, I guess. I mean, that's it. Okay. I don't know. But she would just show up, and our civil affairs guys would say they'd be talking with Milosevic. The conversation would be going reasonably well. We need you to back off this, move that. We need access, whatever. And then all of a sudden she would show up and they said everything would go to hell in a heartbeat as soon as she came in the room. She was actually, I think, she pictured herself as some kind of poet. She wrote political literature, which I tried to read because we're trying to understand her, which was just, I think even lefties would go to sleep reading this crap, but whatever. But what I realized very quickly when I got back to Canada is this is all, of course, in the early 1990s.
Right.
By the late 1990s, I started realizing the voices of identitarian politics, the politics of identity, the politics of ethnicity, language, etc., and religion, the same voices we heard over there, I'm starting to hear them over here in the late 1990s. And I was like, holy crap, this is bad. We do not need these kinds of people in Canada talking about that kind of stuff, because the politics of identity ultimately lead to conflict, because most politic voices, which are, the politics of identity, they are supremacist in nature. And if you have
whether they're left or right.
Left, right, religious, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They tend to regard themselves as morally superior to the other guy, so crushing them is fine. So if you have identitarian voice over here, A, and identitarian voice B over here, ultimately they will come into conflict because both of them feel they're superior.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because we're not on the same page on everything, but I'm on the same page on this, which is I'm no more comfortable with those yellow vest guys than I am with Antifa guys.
Yeah, I mean, in both cases, I get the point. But if our society is going down the path where we're going to mark ourselves with black hoods or yellow vests and whatever, and refuse to talk to the other, like it's almost getting impossible now in Canada, in many places, to have a rational discussion with somebody who's on the other side of an issue. Weirdly enough,
both sides are unhinged.
Yeah, and it's multiple sides. It's not just both. It's like there's now like multiple voices, and many of them, like you say, are actually unhinged. And for instance, I mean, we'll pick on Trudeau because it's easy to do. But here is a guy.
You know what's funny about that? It's really weird to live in a world, for me, where I dislike Trudeau as much as I dislike Trump. If you want to feel like a true outcast, have those conflicting feelings.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Trump and he's doing certain things, and then he'll say stuff and he'll do stuff, and you just go, "Oh, dude, like back it off 10%."
Yeah.
And the same thing with Trudeau. You look at him and go, "Dear God, this guy got elected twice."
Yeah.
But he actually believes he is morally superior to the rest of us because of his globalist, Islamist, progressive kind of views. So I don't know if people...
Is it that, or is it the fact that he grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth? Those people to me are drastically different than the rest of us.
Okay, the silver spoon thing can produce a generation sometimes which is arrogant, difficult to work with, whatever. But I mean, it used to be with the rich, they would teach their own kids, to whom much is given, much is expected. That was like JFK. He came from that sort of thing. That you're the leader, you have responsibilities, come with that. So Trudeau, I think, has a certain silver spoon problem, but that alone, I think, doesn't disqualify him. He is literally, and I've tracked this guy for 8-9 years now. I follow like everything he's done. I read everything he writes, whatever.
Yeah, because the previous 9 wouldn't have taken you too long.
Yeah, I mean, before, with Harper was so boring. You'd kind of get like 5 minutes into reading.
No, I'm talking about Trudeau's previous 9. If you go back 18, there wasn't that much to see.
Yeah, a little groping, a little skiing, a little punch out in a club when he was a bouncer or whatever, but that would have been about it. But I mean, he literally signaled all this stuff. So when he was an MP, but before he was prime minister, he actually gave an interview to an Iranian-friendly, Hezbollah-friendly newspaper saying that when I'm elected prime minister, I will have a special immigration program for Muslims and Arabs.
Right.
So when he did the whole Syrian airlift thing, people said, "Oh, he never told us about this. He never ran on that." I'm like, yes, he did. all this stuff he talks about, globalization, the UN, all this sort of stuff, open borders and all this stuff. He talked about all this stuff. The problem is nobody listened to him because they thought he was a flake. So is he a brilliant intellectual? No, he's not. He is not the old man. The old man could run circles around most of us and would run double circles around
whether you liked him or not. You have to admit it.
Yeah. That Trudeau, I think, could convince you it's broad daylight at midnight and you'd walk out and feel you were the one that was stupid. I mean, he was just so intellectually brilliant. Whereas poor old Justin, we're going to drink bottles out of water that are made out of bottled waters or whatever we're going to do. I just can't get my head around it. But such as he is coherent when he has a moment, he is consistent. He is a consistent globalist, open borders, this sort of thing. He is a consistent globalist. He doesn't like old stock Canadians. He thinks we need to replenish Canada with a blah, 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 and all this sort of stuff. So he is consistent like that over a period of time, and it's been years now. But I find it shocking that I see, like you say, how 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you wouldn't know who was Tory, conservative, dippers, or whatever, unless you specifically asked them, or there'd be the odd one who would wear a flag or something. Okay, great. But now it's become that. And what I see is Canada moving down the path America's moving down. I see America moving down the path of incredibly violent ideas driven by identitarian politics. And I fear we're going down that same path.
We don't have all the tools they have, though.
Okay, so what we're missing...
We haven't got the Second Amendment.
We don't have the Second Amendment. We probably don't have quite as many guns as they have, although people do tend to forget. Canadians do have a lot of guns. We just don't shoot them that much. And most of the guns used to belong to, like, literally duck hunters and farmers and guys out in the country that would have one for New Year's Eve and shoot the odd duck or something. But we are moving to a position in Canada, I think, where we don't have the violence right now other than like the gangbangers in Toronto and that sort of stuff. But if we get into a really sharp recession, which we will, tomorrow, 6 months, a year from now, we're going to have a recession. It's going to be bad. When the pie shrinks and when people lose their jobs, and if we actually go from a recession into a depression, and the difference is in a recession, your neighbor loses his job. In a depression, you lose your job. But if we get into that sort of situation as the pie is shrinking, people always blame two things, the government and the other. So Canadians will, because we're just like everybody else, we will blame the government for the recession, whether it's their fault or not. And in this case, a good chunk of it will be their fault.
Right.
But we will also blame the other. And who is the other right now? It's going to be illegal migrants. And it ain't going to be pretty. That's my feeling, because we are being pre-programmed and pre-prepared to respond violently to...
Well, the scary part there is you don't know the difference looking at a person as to whether they're illegal or legal.
Yeah,
and then you start getting into these situations we're seeing in mall parking lots and stuff, which is a very scary thing to me because I grew up never seeing that.
Yeah, likewise.
Where people are just attacking people based on how they appear.
Yeah, the difference to me was I actually saw this crap, but I was in places like Croatia, Bosnia, Albania.
Right, but you weren't here.
Yeah, so when I came back to Canada, I kind of thought, well, once again, thank God I live in Canada and not some moronic place like Leaky Petrovo.
Yeah, you must have thought that a lot of the time when you got back.
And so, when I was like in Belarus or Eastern Russia over by the Volga Mountains or by the Volga River and all that kind of stuff, you kind of come back home and go once again, like, thank God for hot water and food.
You know how you know the culture's changed here? You might not know this, but I'll tell you how I know it.
Okay.
I'm a movie buff, movie theater buff.
Yeah.
Go all the time. I would say there's at least 25% of screens now in Cineplexes, at least in the GTA, Toronto area, that are turned over to Bollywood films.
Yeah, I mean, there's an.
And you look, and then it's the first time. I said to myself, "Wow, we really are multicultural."
Yeah, the multicultural thing doesn't bother me as long as the word integration is still involved there somewhere.
Well, on that note, what is the requirement for Canadian citizenship if you're an immigrant? What test do you have to pass? What oath do you have to give?
There is an actual test where you're supposed to write. You sit down with a piece of paper and fill out the test, whatever. I actually know a couple of folks. One of the guys I work with a lot, he and his wife just did it. So they kind of give you a book. You read the book. You should be able to pass the test.
Have you read it?
I just kind of read through it. It's about as hard as doing a driver's license. So if you're smart enough to read the book for the driver's license thing and remember you park, I don't know even what it is, 18 inches from the curb and all that stuff. Yeah. And what does the yellow sign mean? And don't run people over.
So at 85, if you don't pass the eye test, they can take your citizenship away. They bring you in every 3 months, every 18 months.
Yeah. So bottom line is the hurdle's not that hard to meet, and if anything, it's dropping a bit. But what
about values? Is there a values portion of it?
I didn't ask that. I don't think so. I don't know. That's a good question, actually.
That's what I wonder about, because with America, there's a values portion.
Yeah, because I think this is the problem. I mean, when what's her name there was running for the Tory party, Kelly Leach, when she said Canadian values, people went ballistic, like, oh, that's racism, it's Islamophobia, it's I don't know, whatever, blah blah blah. And now we have Prime Minister Trudeau lecturing us on Canadian values. I just about choked, but no, I think there is. I mean,
you know why I choked? Because this was not a 17, 16, 15-year-old kid who wore blackface and stuck a banana down the front of his pants.
No, he's like 28, 29.
And he's a school teacher.
Yeah. And he's supposed to be somewhat of a role model.
The blackface was bad enough, but then when you look beyond it and you said, wait a minute, how old was he? What was he doing for a living? Who was he influencing at the time? Because he held sway over kids.
Yeah.
That's the part that made me go out of my fucking mind when I saw that.
Yeah, so the thing that finished me for him, there's a lot of things that I look at, stuff he's done, but one that just sent a shock through my system was when he was supposed to be groping that girl at was it BC or wherever it was?
Yeah, British Columbia.
Whatever.
Kokanee.
Yeah, and he actually said words to the effect that, oh, well, I wouldn't have done that if I'd known you were a reporter.
Right.
And I just thought, oh my God, you just admitted that you prey on the weak, but if you'd known she was strong, you might not have done it.
And the media gave him a pass on it.
Yeah, and I'm like, hang on just a second. He is groping a woman who was working as, blah, 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 but she actually had journalistic connections. And you kind of sit there and go, he said, I wouldn't have done that if I'd known she was a reporter. In other words, if I'd known she could have hit me back, I wouldn't have done it. And I thought, that's an admission that it wasn't like a little drunk situation that got out of control. He said, she said. It's like, no, he was preying on her deliberately thinking she was weak. And It's just like, well, there's a hell of a statement to make for a guy who claims he is a feminist. And coming out of all of this, every time now I hear the word male feminist, I think misogynist. Like the only people that call themselves male feminists are probably the guys that prey on weak females. That's just my own personal opinion.
My belief is that the guys who call themselves feminists are trying to get laid at any cost.
For perhaps the younger generation, the millennial crowd.
That's what I think.
Yeah, for the millennial crowd, that may be true. For a little, shall we say, older crowd, then I just tend to think like there's something.
It's like guys in the late 50s and early 60s who used to go to cafes and write shit poetry.
Oh, yeah.
So they could pawn themselves off as beatniks to get the girls with the long dark hair and the turtleneck sweaters.
Carry the guitar. Can you play guitar? No. Why do you carry one? Because the girls like it.
Yeah. It's the same deal.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same deal.
I'm a male feminist. No, you're not. You're predatory.
And there's a huge difference between toxic male and alpha. And I don't think you're seeing any delineation between the two now.
Yeah, I get a kick when you see a picture. There was a picture out a while ago, and it was a flood somewhere in the United States. And there's Joe the fireman up to his waist in water, hiking this woman out. And all the people, oh, look at that toxic masculinity, whatever. And I thought, well, good. Next time you swim out yourself. You know.
Now, how old were you when you joined the military?
I was old. I was 20, pushing 21. So I was like 20.
What were you doing before that? Going to school, obviously.
I'd gone to school for a while. I'd worked at the flying club for a while. I'd done odd jobs. I worked for the railroad for a couple of years as a waiter, bartender.
So what branch did you join?
When I initially joined, I joined as an aero engine tech. I'd been working at the flying club, working on light aircraft there, and the guy running the flying club said, if you want to get into this field and you want to work on aircraft and you want to get the qualification, he says, join the military, don't be stupid. It's the fastest, easiest way to do it. So I went down to the recruiting center and said, Tommy Gallant sent me from the flying club, and they said, sign here. It was that fast. I did an aero engine tech for a while, and then I flew for a couple of years, 3.5 years in Seeking helicopters as the...
in or flew them yourself?
No, flew inside. So I was an air crewman, and I did the radar, sonar, electronic warfare, the search and rescue stuff, some of the communication stuff, whatever. So anytime you see a helicopter going into the ocean and it flies along, goes into a hover, and they take some dummy, put him on the end of the hoist, and lower him in the water. Yeah, I was the dummy in the end of the hoist.
So you were there for search and rescue.
I was that guy. So our primary role was anti-submarine warfare.
Right.
Was Seeking helicopters, but because it was the only helicopter on the whole East Coast that could do all day, all night, all weather operations, we did a lot of search and rescue.
Well, you must have done a good job, because I can't recall an enemy sub sinking one of our ships in the last 35, 40 years.
Well, I mean, during the Cold War, I'll tell you, there were some tense moments where Russian, what we call boomers, used to come over, and these are submarines that carry...
Okay, you know what? Cold War, but I mean, we talk about Canada and Russia. Wasn't it more like a lukewarm bathwater type war?
There were literally a couple of hot moments, one of which is actually, I can tell you, was kind of funny, where we almost nuked a fish, but we'll talk about that later. But there were moments when the Soviets...
Was the fish in international waters?
It was.
Not good.
But we did have moments where the Soviets...
Was it an Ahai tuna?
We probably thought it was a porpoise, actually.
Okay.
After all was said and done. But, the Soviets would push hard on occasion to see if they could break through screens and stuff like that. And they would send these missile-carrying submarines in, which can literally wipe out, like, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Quebec in one volley, and then it's gone.
Right.
And there were times when things happened, tensions were high, and politicians were yelling at each other. And when the politicians start to yell at each other over the airwaves, that's when we got nervous and thinking, these guys are acting stupid and we don't need this. So we saw some situations where there was fear because the politicians were behaving stupidly out of ego and positioning. But there were also cases during, I don't know if you remember the infamous tuna war off Newfoundland with Spain, where we found out, and I should be careful what I say here, but we found out that the politicians were being stupid to each other. And I'd actually been out on the Algonquin, and we actually had orders, and we actually pointed a gun at a Spanish vessel with the intent of firing if it didn't move.
Right.
Things got that close. But what we found out...
All because they took too much cod.
Raping and pillaging the fishing banks, and they literally destroyed huge docks. So
I'm trying to picture a Spanish sailor raping a cod.
Okay, that's, yeah. Well, let's not get into that. But anyway, and it's illegal anyway. I'm not sure if it's in international waters. Is it illegal to rape a cod? I don't know. Call the War Crimes Tribunal. But what we found out afterwards was their admiral and our chief of defense staff were keeping a separate line open for themselves. And they would actually say, okay, our ships are going to be here. Where are your ships? Our ships there. Okay, we know where each other are now. So let's not be stupid. Let's not let our guys get into close contact where something could go wrong.
Right.
Because if you think about it, you remember like a lot of wars go wrong because somebody did something stupid. World War I, nobody planned World War I. That was some idiot Serb in Sarajevo deciding he wanted to go at the Archduke and killed the guy.
Right, Ferdinand.
And Ferdinand was an Archduke, but he was like a nothing politician. He was a second-grade Archduke that nobody cared about.
Yeah, he was a nobody, right?
He was a nobody, but he was an Archduke, so, whatever. The next thing you know, one guy says this, the next politician says that, the next thing you know, the trains are being mobilized, the troops are being mobilized, and then we killed 20 million people. Now, there's a lot going on. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was collapsing, the German Empire was building, the Brits hated the Germans hated the Russians hate everybody, the French hate everybody. But the war got started by accident. Nobody planned that. So when I look at the Iranian situation right now, the Saudi Empire is collapsing. The Iranian Empire is growing, getting stronger, albeit it's got its own problems. Syria's been destroyed. Iraq has been destroyed. Yemen has been destroyed. Jordan is kind of, whatever, it's still there, but not doing much. Lebanon is now Hezbollah, basically. So the region is in a sense of change. Everything is changing quickly. There's upheavals, there's volatility, and politicians are saying stupid things. And then we get the Iranian Al-Quds General Soleimani, orders attacks on tankers in the Gulf, trying to internationalize the conflict. He tries dropping a round on a Saudi oil refinery, which caused a huge amount of damage, trying to get things going. He shot down a couple of U.S. drones, couldn't draw the U.S. into the conflict. But he attacks the U.S. embassy, and all of a sudden people say, okay, this is Trump's Benghazi moment. And I think Democrats are actually going, oh, look, it's Trump's Benghazi moment. They're hoping it's going to go wrong so they can blame the orange man. And I think to everybody's surprise, Trump said, right, send in the Marines, send in the helicopters. If they actually get through the screen on the embassy, kill them. Yeah. And Apache helicopters were literally flying down the street, dropping flares, which is a message to the people on the ground that if you go over that wall, you're going to die. So I think that when people say, well, it's Trump's fault the airplane was shot down, it's like, no. This conflict's been going on, for 5,000 years, so it's actually Abraham's fault, or maybe it's Eve because she ate the apple, I'm not sure. But if you go back at it, the immediate crisis which caused this mess was started by Soleimani when he decided to have a go at the ships in the Gulf. That was the immediate cause of the crisis. And then the actual flashpoint was when Soleimani had his guys in Iraq, who are Shia militias, who he pays, trains, and organizes. He had them attack the embassy. That was when he crossed the line. And Trump is now in a position like, what does he do? Does he lose an embassy? And do you lose an embassy to Iran? Folks who don't remember Jimmy Carter will recall that Jimmy Carter lost an embassy to Iran. They overran it, and it destroyed Carter's presidency.
You think that had something to do with it? The fact that 40 years ago?
You can't lose an embassy, and you can't have a Benghazi moment.
Well, you don't want a Benghazi moment, but why can't you? It's not so much lose an embassy. Why? My question is, why didn't they? The embassy in Iran. I mean, after the Shah was gone, I never understood why the Americans didn't pull out at the same time.
Oh, they don't have an embassy in Iran right now. There isn't one.
No, but I'm talking about when the Shah was there. The Shah left.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like, well, actually, during the turmoil of the revolution.
During the turmoil, I would have pulled out right then.
Some embassies actually were evacuated.
Right.
Some weren't. I don't think anybody anticipated, including the Americans, that the Shah would fall that quickly. What people tend to forget, the Shah got booted for maybe what might be justifiable reasons by his own people. But it was the Islamicists, i.e. the Ayatollah Khomeini came in from the outside, who returned from exile. And the people that put him into power were not only the Islamists, i.e. the religious Shia who supported his particular sect, but it was also the lefties. It was the leftists in Iran in 79 who put him over the top and got him into power. I don't think anybody saw that coming, including the Americans. So a lot of people tend to forget, and I don't want to laugh at lefties when I say this, but as soon as the Ayatollah Khomeini established his power in Iran, as soon as it was stabilized, the first thing he did was rounded up 30,000 leftists who'd supported him and put him into power and killed them.
Right.
Demonstrating what he's like. So, yeah, the question, I mean, should they evacuated the embassy? Maybe they should have, maybe they shouldn't have. It was, one of those judgment calls at the moment. And when people are forced to make judgment calls on the spur of the moment, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. I've been involved in a few situations in the military where we made judgment calls where, thank God, we didn't blow anything up or kill anybody, but we did wind up looking pretty stupid a couple of times.
Now, the people who fled at that time are probably in their early to mid-70s now, a lot of them. Right, a lot of them were adults with families.
Yeah,
I know two people whose parents fled in '79.
Yeah, so
they came here and they came to America, right?
Yeah, so that was 40 years ago. So if you were 30 when you quit, you'd be 70 now.
Yeah. So these people, these are the ones who are anti-Ayatollah here, right?
Yeah, a good number of people here in Iran, here in Canada, who hate the Iranians, who demonstrate against the regime. Will be the generation who left the 70s. The other people here in Canada protesting the Iranians are the Green Revolution kids. These are kids who mobilized a couple of years ago. They got into the streets. They thought they were going to overthrow the regime. They thought they were going to get support from Obama. They got nothing. And of course, they got killed in some cases. They got tortured and others got jailed. And a lot of those kids looked around and said, time to get out. And so we got a bunch of those kids in Canada. And when you see them protesting against the regime, that's either like the old guys who still remember the days of the Shah or whatever, or it's these kids who know exactly how corrosive and how dangerous this government is.
So what about the in-betweens, the ones who were young when they left or born here?
Well, I mean, I know a number of Iranians who look at Iran and go, yeah, whatever.
They don't care.
My father's from there. I'd like to go back to the old country. I still talk to grandmother, but I ain't going back there. I have no... I mean, it's my ancestors, if I go back, are Irish, Manx, and English. It's great. Love the culture. Yeah. I have no intent of moving back.
Right. Well, it's nothing for them there.
Yeah, and why would I move back to Ireland or the Isle of Man now? Or why would I move to the UK now? It's like, I'm just not. Yeah. And I think a lot of Iranians are like that. They're here now. They look around and they go, yeah, this ain't that bad. Matter of fact, it's pretty good, even on a bad day.
So these people who are protesting in Iran now against the Ayatollah, who are they?
Okay, there's a couple of different groups out there. One is what one might loosely call the middle class, although that's got a whole different connotation over there. They were promised a better...
what's middle class there compared to here?
Well, it's not quite as good. I mean, the cars are smaller, the houses are smaller, et cetera, et cetera. But they have a middle class. They have, water in the pipes. They have sewage systems at work. They have, lights in their apartments, that kind of stuff. It's not that bad, or it wasn't. But once the arms control agreement was signed with Obama and all that good stuff, the Iranians were actually told we're getting billions of dollars from America, which they did. They got out. They got.
Well, I thought all they did. I thought all they got was unfrozen assets.
They got some unfrozen assets, $1.6 billion in cash, which they flew back, which was a huge mistake. And then a whole bunch more electronic money was released. And then they got sort of like privileges where they could re-engage in trade, redo this, redo that. So the total value, people argue over, it's 60 billion, 100 billion, whatever it was. But a bunch of money went into Iran. And the government of Iran told the people, yay, we won, we defeated the evil Satan, we got this agreement, everything's going to get better. And of course, what Iran's been doing with the money for the last several years is fighting 5 different proxy wars. They got a proxy war going in in Iraq. They got one going in Syria. They control most of Lebanon now through Hezbollah. They're gradually moving in and taking over parts of Hamas, as Hamas itself, which is a brotherhood outfit, is collapsing in on itself, and they're getting a lot of Iranian support to stay alive. And they were supporting the Houthis in Yemen, which is why the Saudis and the Houthis are involved in this absolutely endless, stupid war. So Iran has been pouring money down a tube into all these conflicts, and a lot of Iranian people are going, hey, things were supposed to get better. What the hell happened? And by the way, why do we keep reading this crap on the news that we've got guys here and guys there?
Where do you get all your information from?
Wow, I get a lot of stuff. So I got a Twitter account. Twitter is great in a certain way for things that pop up all of a sudden. But of course, you can't believe anything you read there, so you always need secondary sources when you see something like that. So I do a lot of social media stuff. I do a lot of mainstream media stuff still. I still own these weird things which are kind of made out of paper, and they're folded and arranged in a certain way, and they're called books, which I know is kind of a boomer thing, but nonetheless, I still have a few of those.
How do you know you can trust how do you know if you can trust a mainstream media outlet to give you the right info?
Short answer, you can't. It used to be a few years ago, 10 years ago, you could trust some of the mainstream outfits. Reuters is still fairly good. When you read a 2-paragraph thing in Reuters that say this volcano just blew up or that plane just crashed or whatever, Reuters, I'm not saying they're always correct, but they're not bad. They actually,
and that's all I want, by the way, are facts. I don't want opinions.
Yeah. So Reuters is not too bad. I'm not saying they're perfect, not saying they're flawless, but they're probably better than many. The New York Times used to be, how do you know it's true? Well, I read it in the New York Times. The New York Times used to have a fact-checking staff of over 70 people, who are incidentally all women and headed by a woman. So when
what's that mean?
These are people who do precise, accurate work.
So that was a compliment.
Yeah. Oh no, it is. In the intelligence world, a lot of times you look at, who do you want to hire to do certain kinds of work, and if you're looking at painstaking analytical work with multiple moving parts and you want to fit it all together, quite often women are better, or people who come from tribal cultures are better.
Women are detail conscious.
On average, most women are better at that kind of work,
and they're not prone to exaggeration.
Yeah. Most men are better at hierarchical stuff, moving stuff up and down through hierarchies. Most women are better moving laterally back and forth and putting information together. That's an intelligence thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know that we're all equal and nobody's different, but the simple fact of the matter is people from tribal cultures are better at doing intelligence analyst work, and women tend to be better at cross-cultural, cross-national analysis.
Because they respect it.
It's just a different way of thinking about things. And I know, of course, the official story is now everybody's born with the same brain and we're all the same, et cetera, but it's actually crap.
What, as far as you know, what as far as you know is the ratio between female and male analysts and things like CSIS, our Secret Service?
I would tend to think, like, for instance, CIA, for instance, used to be like totally male dominated. Yeah. And it was not only male,
but they were all male. Princeton, Yale.
Yeah. So people used to say we have 1,000 analysts, and people finally convinced CIA they didn't have 1,000 analysts. They had one analyst 1,000 times.
Right.
So what you really need is 999 different guys. They're different people. So they're moving more to getting more a different set of backgrounds, a different set of languages, a different set of experiences, a different set of travel. And the more travel they are, the more languages they speak, they tend to be better at it. So that part of the world, I think, is actually getting better. When you're talking about trust, when you're reading your report, so something flashes up on the screen and you say, okay, well, this just happened and that just happened. So first thing, people always say, well, you have to trust the source or don't trust the source or whatever. And I say, yeah, there's your first mistake. So first thing actually is to say the source. Who is the source?
Right.
Do you trust the source? And people say, well, I trust him because he was right last time. And it's go, well, great. What does that mean? It means absolutely nothing. So when you look at a source, you have to say, who is the source? Where is the source? Are they close to the action? Is the source there for a reason? Do they have an axe to grind or being paid to be there? So if they're paid by Reuters to be there, that's probably pretty good. If they work for a human rights NGO, you might want to be careful to see who actually pays that NGO, because most of the so-called human rights NGOs now are actually advocacy groups. Yeah. That's an unfortunate reality. So then you have to look at the source and say, how old are they? Have they been there before? Have they been down this path before or whatever? So you do a series of detailed analysis on the source. And then the question is, who's paying them at the end of the day and who do they advocate for? So that's important in source analysis. The other thing is that people tend to forget is there's a second part to this. And so you not only have source reliability, you have information credibility. So is the information credible? Does it make sense? Does it fit a known pattern? Does it fit on a chronology? Does it fit on a historical pattern? Is it physically possible that this happened? So people are saying, with the Iranian shootdown, a guy with a shoulder-fired missile did whatever, and I looked at it and just looked at the video I saw and looked at the angle and everything else. Said that wasn't a guy with a shoulder-fired SAM. It just wasn't. So the information that it was a shoulder-fired SAM was not credible if you understand anything at all about missiles. So you look at information credibility and say, is it credible? Could it have happened? Why would it happen? Why would it be in the interest of this group or that country to carry that action out when it's counterproductive to them? So that's kind of, you break the problem into two: source reliability, information credibility, and then you try and put it together and say, okay, do I believe this, yes or no? So that's kind of an.
Now, when you come to that conclusion, when you come to a conclusion one way or the other, do you also come up with a remedy in your head? You got to do it.
In remedy, and like, how do I solve the problem in Iran? Or
how do I solve whatever problem when I read about it?
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the problems of the intelligence world is people hate us because we tell everybody about problems. You shouldn't do that because of this problem. That went wrong, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. I work a bit with like James Altucher in New York, and one of the reasons I like going on his podcast because he's totally solutions oriented. He says, I don't even care about the problem; I care about solutions. So he's a guy I like talking to because of that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, there's no sense raising the problem if you can't come up with a solution. Now, the fact, did the Iranians shoot that airplane down by themselves? Yes or no? Was it an accident? Yes or no? Well, too late for a solution now. The damn plane hit the ground. They're all dead. There's no solution. It's too late.
Right.
But it's that kind of thing that I look at and say, source reliability, information credibility. Now, a couple other things worth keeping in the back of your head. anytime there's a crisis and something just pops up, a ship sinks, an airplane gets shot down, some fishing boat in Japan runs up against some Filipino Coast Guard boat and they're shooting at each other. First thing in a crisis, just remember this. Never assume malice when stupidity will explain the situation.
Right.
Because most international incidents, most of these things are caused by stupidity, not by malice. And I've been in enough of them through the military, through the UN and whatever, to have seen this and to know it's true. The other thing is...
There's no way in the heat of the moment that, cooler... it's not always true that cooler, more intelligent heads prevail.
99 times out of 100 they do. But the 100 times when it doesn't, stuff goes wrong. Yeah. And like I said, we almost nuked a fish. Oh, it wasn't nuke. It would have been an explosive weapon. But we actually went weapons hot on a fish, which was pretty embarrassing after. But, there is that. The other thing in a crisis...
Well, who's he going to tell? Did you kill it?
Well, we didn't. When we finally... on the sonar, I finally figured out when this thing did a 90-degree turn, went to a full stop, did a 90-degree turn, and took off at 30 knots. All of a sudden, it's like... Yeah, that's not a submarine. We've been done by a porpoise. It's a funny story, but whatever. But here's the second thing.
Yeah, you keep saying that. When are you going to get to it?
All right, so first thing in a crisis. Let's go to it. First thing in a crisis, never assume malice when stupidity will explain the situation. Second thing in a crisis, absent any other information, the simplest answer is the correct answer. And folks know that as Occam's razor, and Occam was right. If everything else is going wrong...
Yes, Occam's razor. It's on everybody's lips.
Yes, I know. I guess I'm old school. When I took political science, we actually had to take that stuff plus math and statistics. I guess nobody does that anymore. Now it's about how do you feel. But anyway, let's not get into that.
Occam's razor is now your roommate.
Yeah, who has a razor on the counter. But the point being, simplest answer is usually the correct one, especially in a crisis. Yeah. So those are the things worth remembering. So a lot of times, like when I did that interview with James Altucher the day after, he said,
"Okay, I want to get to the porpoise."
Okay, all right. So here it is. It's NATO. It's 1984, 1985. Probably would have been 1985. So this is the Cold War. There are Soviet submarines. There are politicians.
Now you're in intelligence at this time, right?
Actually, I'm still in the Sea King helicopter, and I'm the sonar guy, and I'm the search and rescue guy. So we're with the NATO fleet. We're in the Atlantic. It's a major exercise. There's aircraft carriers, there's destroyers, there's frigates, there's a battle group and all this sort of stuff. And we're doing this thing exactly as we would push a convoy across the Atlantic as we would have done in World War II, and we're still doing this. So it's a big deal. Umpteen dollars getting spent. Great. So we're out there in our little Canadian ship. We're driving around. We get into the helicopter, say, right, we're going flying in the helicopter. And our job is anti-submarine warfare. We're part of the destroyer screen that keeps the submarines away from the major vessels. So we're flying along, and all of a sudden, one of the American ships comes up and goes, contact bearing, blah, 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 we're hot. In other words, they've detected a submarine, they think, on their sonar. They had it for a flash. It's gone, so they're asking for air assistance. And without going into it, the best thing to go after a submarine with is a helicopter. Right. And a helicopter with a sonar ball is the most dangerous weapon against a submarine. So we're the only helicopter.
Because you locate it dead on, right?
We can locate it, isolate it, localize it, and then kill it. So we got told, okay, get your helicopter over there now. Here's the last known bearing. Here's the last known speed. So figured out. So we got over, we dropped the sonar in the water. We went down to what we thought was the second layer of water where the submarine should be. Nothing. So I said, okay, bring the ball up one layer of water. Let's try there. Bing, pop. We get a contact. And it's like, holy crap, pilot, we're hot. Contact bearing, I forgot it was, 020 at 800 yards or something. And it's like, we have a live contact. And it's up Doppler, which means based on the sound the echo is making, it's moving away from us at a good speed. So navigator says, right, up sonar ball, move the helicopter head. We're going to jump in front of it and then turn on it. So we fly out in front of this thing, drop the sonar ball down, and on the first ping, got him right there. And so we said, right, we're hot. We have this guy. We're in contact. And then what we're saying to the commander of the fleet is, what do you want us to do? Right. We now have a live submarine inside the screen, and it's not ours. We know it's not our submarine, but nonetheless, it's inside the screen. It's in a position to kill a major warship. So they said, right, if you can localize the thing, drop weapons. It's like, holy crap, this is real. So just as
when you're on a NATO operation, you will take orders from an American ship?
We will. Yes. Okay. So that's a command and control issue. Canadians, when they're deployed overseas with other forces, you're told, listen to the UN, follow the orders from the UN, unless it contradicts Canadian law or unless it puts Canadians in danger.
It's like a rules of engagement deal.
Yeah, so unless it's putting Canadians in danger for the wrong reason. So when we're with a NATO thing, and the NATO fleet commander at that time happened to be an American because it was an aircraft carrier and all that crap. So we would follow those orders unless it somehow directly contradicted Canadian law or put our own selves at risk for no good reason. So at this point, we have a submarine inside the screen, and we think, holy crap, it's a foreign submarine. This guy's in a position where he can kill us, and he's not responding. So while we're getting the thing that says, like, go weapons hot, in other words, you can drop a torpedo, all of a sudden, I look at this thing, and I thought, it stopped. Why would it stop? And a submarine can't stop quickly. And not only that, it changed course 90 degrees and took off at 30 knots. And I elbowed the navigator and pointed it to him and said, it's not a submarine. It can't be. Like, no submarine in the world can go from 0 to 30 like that.
Yeah.
Nothing in the world can go like that. Maybe a Sea-Doo or something, but nothing at like 200 feet. And all of a sudden he goes, let's jump again. Let's get in front of it. And he said, put the sonar ball down and go on a high rate of ping. So we get down to like ping, ping, ping. And what you hear then is, and you realize you're hitting a soft target. We had the entire NATO fleet turned, ready to go to war on a fish. Porpoise.
Yeah.
I call it a fish. I know it's not a fish, but whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, one of the lessons
like
I learned...
Mr. Limpet. It would have been a very embarrassing Don Knotts deal.
Yeah. So here's the thing. People talk about porpoises and they say, oh, the ships are destroying porpoises and this, that. We used to watch these things. They'd come up alongside the ship and they'd play in the water in front of the ship. They'd dive in and out of the wave in the ship. They'd go down in the back. They'd swim through the water in the back. They'd go back around. They used to circle around us. And every now and again, when we're doing anti-submarine warfare exercises, I got the idea the porpoise was jerking us around, that they had an idea that they were doing something. So bottom line is I think porpoises are smarter than humans and they're certainly better in the marine environment. But point of that whole story is to say, in the heat of the moment, with the technology we have and how you perceive the conflict environment around you, things can look very real.
You just scared
and then it turns out they're not.
Me. You scared the shit out
Well,
of
we've
me.
had a couple of very close calls. We had an almost nuclear war during the Cold War. People tend to forget this as well. That was stopped by a Russian colonel. So a Soviet defense system basically malfunctioned. They were getting a series of indicators that the war had gone hot, that missiles were coming towards the motherland in Russia.
Like failsafe.
Yeah, exactly that sort of scenario. And the orders came down from on high that if the missiles do this or whatever, we launch. Some Russian colonel looked at it and said, nah, this isn't right. He says, everything went wrong at once. The Americans wouldn't do that. They would do this in a different way. And he actually refused to launch, and then there was some yelling and screaming, and then they figured out the system had gone wrong. So we owe our existence to a Russian colonel who looked around one day and said, this just doesn't feel
Did you ever find out who this guy was?
If you look him up, yeah, he's known. I mean, he went on the lecture circuit once the Cold War was over and all that, and sort of described on how we almost toasted the planet.
Hey, is it true we were duped on that they had very bad equipment? A lot of it was antiquated.
Oh, I mean...
And a lot of their missile silos were rusted out and didn't work.
So, okay, we were told during the Cold War, and it was always the NATO line, Russian soldiers are 10 feet tall, they eat babies, and they kill puppy dogs.
Right.
And they're the most fearsome thing on the face of the earth. So I was what's called a CFE arms control inspector, Conventional Forces in Europe Treaty Arms Control Inspector. So in 91, 92, 93, I was in and out of Albania, Poland, Russia, Belarus.
What was your rank then?
I was a captain of intelligence by that point.
Right. You went from Sea Kings to that?
I went from Sea Kings as a sergeant. The military, due to a paperwork error, probably decided to send me back to university where I got a master's degree, and I went into the intelligence world after that.
Okay.
So as a captain of intelligence, I'm in a bunch of Russian bases and Belarusian bases and Polish bases, whatever. And yeah, that was kind of, you looked at it and went, right, these guys were going to conquer Europe with this. Some of the Soviet frontline gear was pretty good. Their Class A divisions, if you want to call them that, were not too bad. But when you get back to the second and third, it was like, oh my God. But
they kind of sucked us in because we always aired those Mayday parades on cable news and stuff. And, when the Soviet premier would be standing there and this stuff would go by and you go, holy shit, look at all that stuff they have.
Yeah, they have a lot of stuff. The Russians were believers in mass. Stalin was a guy who gave us the expression, what did he used to say? He said, quantity has a quality of its own. Because the Western argument is quantity is good, but it's quality that matters. And Stalin correctly observed that if you've got lots of quantity, the quality is not that important. Now, having said
if you don't go to war.
Yeah. Now, as we found out, Saddam Hussein had high quantities of armor in the desert. But when they were invaded during the 203 war or whatever, it folded in a heartbeat because it sucked. And besides which, most guys driving the tanks for Saddam Hussein weren't saying, hey, I'm going to go out here and die for Saddam.
Right.
So we had a British commander come over after us and said his guys driving tanks at the start of that thing, not the 2003 invasion, but the Gulf War before that, the Kuwait one, actually said that his guys, first off, when they started rolling, their tanks would go in, they'd zero in on an Iraqi tank and put a round through it and destroy it. and then the next one, and then the next one. And then he says his gunners started saying, we're not doing this. We're not slaughtering people. This is supposed to be a war. It's not supposed to be slaughtering guys.
It's like T-ball where they stop the game when you're 7 runs ahead.
Yeah, is there
Wars like T-ball.
Yeah. Is there a point where we just give up? So he said what his gunners started doing without orders, and they just did it themselves, was they zero in the tank, put the laser in the tank, and then just bring it down one notch and put a round beside the tank or in front of the tank. And it was a message to the Iraqis saying, we got you. Do you want to quit now? And he said,
what they do?
He said most of the time, the Iraqis would jump out of the tank, run away, and then they put a second round through the tank, and that was the end of it. But they said, it's one thing to get into a war. It's another thing to slaughter 18-year-old kids who don't know what they're doing.
Right. Different story.
Their quality was not great because, whatever, they weren't trained, and I don't think they gave a damn either, which is a problem. Yep. Whereas our guys mostly do give a damn, or at least we did. Certainly going to Bosnia. One of the real lessons of Bosnia, it was a heartbreaker and a real problem for the guys, is we go over there, so we're Canadians. We're taught about war. We're taught about violence. We're taught about rule of engagement. We know how to kill people because we're actually quite good at it. So we're over there to help these people.
Canada?
Yeah, we're actually very good at this. Our special forces and our infantry guys are known world over for very effective. I mean, World War II, we had a relatively small unit,
right,
but we're actually quite good at killing people.
So we're known for being good at the job, but no psychos or anything.
We do tend to screen. The military screens very heavily for psychos. The guy that shot up the Quebec legislature, whatever, we won't get into that.
Yeah, we failed on that one.
So anyway, when we're in Bosnia and our guys are told we're Canadians, we believe in values, we believe in morals, we believe in rules of engagement. And then they get over there, and we had an incident early on which just turned everybody off. So the guys are told we're delivering food to starving people. So we land food at the airport at a fairly high risk because it was a high-risk environment. We put food onto trucks. We drive the trucks through the town. And then we escort them with armored vehicles. So a sergeant, which is typical in the Canadian Forces, a sergeant is given a couple of armored vehicles, and he's told there's 6 or 8 trucks, whatever it was, drive them across town, escort them, bring them back. So they go across town, they dump off the food. As he's coming back, he notices there's a firefight going on just beside him, and he's wondering what's that all about. And he looks over. It's a bunch of guys in buildings with automatic rifles. They've got a bunch of civilians lined up, and they're picking them off one by one up against the building, and they're going through, killing them off as they're moving, and the people got nowhere to run because if they try and run into the open, they'll just get slaughtered. So the sergeant looks at this and goes, yeah, this isn't good. So he tells his gunner, bring the 50 caliber around, put it on the building. He says, fire a couple of rounds, and if it stops, great. If it doesn't, dump the belt. So the kid brings the gun around, fires a couple of rounds. They keep firing, so he dumped the belt of 50 caliber ammunition into a building, and a 50 caliber machine gun will go right through a building. It'll tear rooms apart. It's a serious.
Yeah, it's not like the movies.
It's a heavy machine gun.
Go right through walls.
It'll go right through walls out the other side. It'll go through brick and that kind of stuff. And a 50 caliber round goes by, you know it. So they did this.
Show me with your hands how big a 50 caliber bullet is.
Well, the 50 cal refers to 0.5 of an inch. So you could stick your index finger down the barrel of the gun. You could stick your thumb down the barrel of the gun.
Yeah.
And the round itself is about that.
Yeah.
And then the tip is about like that. So the speed that thing is going, the mass it's got, it's a serious weapon for that kind of scenario. So the Serbian guys that were in the building all ran for it. The civilians recognized that there's a break in the action. They ran like hell, and then the sergeant said, "Right, good, carry on back to the airfield."
What's a 50 caliber bullet worth financially?
I don't really know. Back a 7.62 round, we were told was worth about 80 cents, so like $1 ago kind of a thing. 50 caliber rounds got to be worth, I don't know.
Yeah, so might not just be rules of engagement.
15 or $20 or something like that.
Yeah, you never know with our government. It might be, listen, you got 50 caliber bullets today.
Yeah, you spent the budget, now we're in trouble. So what actually happened is he got written up by the UN because he didn't follow the rules of engagement.
Right.
So what we were told, and the rules of engagement said Canadian forces and UN forces operating there could only fire if they were being directly threatened. So I asked the sergeant, were you being directly threatened? And he said, well, I don't think so. I mean, it looked like maybe, but at that exact moment, no, we weren't. So why did you fire on him? And he says, he was slaughtering these civilians. And they said, not your job. So, and we're kind of like, well, what the hell is our job? What are we
because we always seem to get put between a rock and a hard place on this stuff.
So this is why I hate bureaucrats, and I've got a lifelong pathological loathing of bureaucrats because of this kind of thing. We ran into this.
Well, hang on. If they're wrong, it's not pathological.
Yeah. Well,
you're being too hard on yourself.
Yeah, there's that. But you get these bureaucrats that tell you, oh, no, your mission is this, you don't do that. But we also train our soldiers. We have to respect human life. We have to do this. We have certain... So we're told you're there to protect civilians and feed them. So as you're watching civilians be slaughtered, your job is to drive down the street and ignore it. And, of course, this drives Canadians nuts. It drives the soldiers nuts. And if we're just going to watch them get killed, let's go home. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Why bother? And, oh, well, the UN has decided whatever. So our attitude usually is like, screw the UN. Next time we just won't tell them about it.
Yeah.
But that drove people absolutely insane. It drove the soldiers nuts to get constantly caught between these things where, oh, no, your job is to do this, this, and this, but you can't do that, and you can't do that, and you can't do that. And it's like, then what the hell are we doing here? Like, let's get out of here. So that's a real problem, and that's why a lot of soldiers hate bureaucrats and they hate diplomats.
Can't really blame them.
Yeah, so you get like the safe area thing. Oh, Srebrenica's a safe area. Of course, they all got slaughtered, but it's a safe area. So a bunch of diplomats get together with a bunch of politicians, and they design these safe areas like they did in Syria, like they did in Bosnia. And that's where the civilians go, and they can be safe because they're there, because it's a safe area.
Are you being sarcastic right now, or you're okay?
I'm being really sarcastic.
Okay?
I'd strangle these guys in a heartbeat. So you're told, okay, they're a safe area. So all these stupid civilians think it's a safe area, and they go there. Well, guess what?
I like the way you're talking about how cool-headed Canadian soldiers are, and then you talk about strangling people.
Oh, I mean, only bureaucrats, though.
Yeah.
So they're told it's a safe area, so they go there, and like, it's only a safe area if somebody defends
By the way, who goes to get your license sticker for you every year? Because there's no way you're going.
Not next time. That's why you can do it through the mail now.
Yeah, okay.
Probably a good thing.
Probably better for them that you do that, Tom.
Yeah. So they go to these safe areas, and then they get slaughtered. And a safe area is only a safe area if somebody's willing to defend it. And if you're going to defend it, that means you've got to kill people. So if somebody starts dropping artillery rounds onto a safe area, you have to be willing to launch an airstrike back and wipe out their artillery.
Right.
Or you have to send infantry guys out and shoot the artillery guys with guns and say, you guys go away, don't do this anymore. So Srebrenica, of course, was the big safe area. They put a Dutch battalion in there, gave them completely restricted...
When I think safe, I think Dutch.
Yeah, well, yeah. So they gave them totally restricted rules of engagement. Couldn't do this, couldn't do that, wouldn't give them manpower, wouldn't do this. And then the Dutch actually left. People tend to forget the Dutch actually left, and then the slaughter occurred. But the problem there was the diplomats and the politicians and the bureaucrats wouldn't allow the right weapons in there. They wouldn't allow the airstrikes. They wouldn't allow heavy air power to go in there. And then they say it's a safe area. Well, if you're going to call it a safe area, you have to be willing to defend it. If not, shut up and go away. You saw the same thing in Syria. They're all trying to negotiate safe areas, and I just about puke when I hear this because I know full well they won't put the forces in to defend them. The other thing with Srebrenica was it was the world's worst designed safe area. If you're trying to pick a piece of terrain where people are going to get slaughtered because it's down on low terrain, it's surrounded by mountains on all sides, it's heavy bush around it, heavy forest around it. So the attacking forces have all the advantages and the defending forces have none. Nobody in the military in their right mind would have picked that safe area to say that's a good place. So I was actually involved myself. And
well, why was that left up to bureaucrats to pick the safe area?
Well, that's another reason is exactly why did this happen. So Akashi, who was the head of the mission at the time, actually came to my boss, who was a Marine Corps colonel, and said, who designed these safe areas? What do we got there? And like, are we in trouble? So he said, I want a political and a military study done on the safe areas, which myself and a Jordanian guy and my Marine Corps boss did. We put it back to him and said, Sarajevo's not too bad. We have enough heavy weapons around Sarajevo. We can defend it. Bihać, not a problem. There's some other stuff going on. But we said the three safe areas, Gorazde, Zepa, and Srebrenica are toast. If anything goes wrong, they're dead. So we put this all together, sent it to Akashi. Akashi sent it to the UN headquarters. No response. They wouldn't even respond to our report saying these three safe areas are toast if anything goes wrong. So we actually sent a guy there who was a Jordanian prince who was working for us at the time. So he's got both princely rank and he's a senior bureaucrat at the time. We thought, well, they can't blow this guy off. So he went there and he said he walked up and down the hallways at the UN, couldn't get a meeting, couldn't get an answer. Nobody wanted to deal with it because the official policy is we have safe areas, but the official response is we're not doing anything. So the people in Srebrenica died. Why? Because bureaucrats are stupid.
Yeah. There's funny things that go on here that I don't know if you'd see them go on anywhere else. I remember the Tamil Tigers blocking the Gardiner.
Yep.
The reason it sticks out in my mind is because I was late for a movie already. And that's a very typical Canadian response. Not so much, what are you doing out here, but why are you holding me up from getting to a movie or whatever it is I was going downtown to do?
Yeah, sorry your country's being burned down, but why are you blocking the road?
Yeah.
And by the way, you guys are terrorists anyway, leave me alone.
And on that note, Canadians, I'm seeing a real sea change, boy, because Canadians, normally, if you make them mad, they almost say something. That's basically what we're known for. Yeah. I'm so mad, I might say something. You know what I mean? But now, we've been so vocal in the new year in 2020, it's just unbelievable when you follow social media and what people are saying and what they're getting upset about. And I wanted to ask you about the Ukrainian airliner crash because, well, not crash, sorry, I didn't mean to use that word. The Ukrainian airliner that was shot down by the Iranians.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't a crash, that wasn't an accident, that wasn't a mechanical failure. Yeah. That was not, a catastrophic.
Which doesn't explain why Boeing stock went down. You know what I mean?
Well, Boeing's got their own problems, but that wasn't one of them.
Right.
That one's not Boeing, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, it's like Maple Leaf Foods with the Listeria thing. As soon as a name's associated with your plane, you go down. But who do you blame? Because I'm hearing stuff from all kinds of people. Depending upon where they sit politically, people are blaming Trump. Depending upon where they sit politically, they're blaming the Iranians. Who do you blame? Because you're an expert on it. Who do you blame?
Eve. She bit the apple. It's been downhill ever since. So if you want to go back to the actual distant cause of all this stuff in the Middle East, it's Eve's fault. She bit the apple. Here we are. But so a more serious question, though, is...
Geez, 25 minutes ago, you loved women.
Yeah, so seriously, but, who is responsible for the immediate crisis? In other words, what happened over the last few weeks that got us to a position where the Iranians...
You know who I blame? I'm not kidding either. I blame an Asian lady and the Pope. First, the Pope got assaulted by an Asian lady, then he slapped her on the hand 3 times, and I went, man, this is not going to be a good year.
If that's not a sign of the end of times, what isn't?
Yeah.
So anyway, so everybody goes, oh, it's Trump's fault. No, it's Soleimani's fault. No, it's Bush's fault, whatever. So here's my view on the world. The area has been a mess for years, so assigning blame to a particular group, individual, religion, faith, or whatever is just, for every time somebody established cause, you can go back another 10 years and prove it was somebody else. So,
right.
But we have an immediate crisis on our hands. So when did the immediate crisis start? It started when General Soleimani, the head of the Al-Quds Force, who the Canadian government says on the record is a terrorist, twice we've done it, officially, public safety says he's a terrorist, he decides that he wants to have a go at a couple of tankers in the Gulf. So the Iranians attack a couple of tankers in the Gulf. They're trying to internationalize the conflict, trying to drag the Americans in, whatever. Doesn't work. So then he decides, all right, we're going to have a go at a Saudi oil refinery. So they drop a missile or a couple of missiles on a Saudi oil refinery, start a huge fire. Doesn't work. They don't internationalize the conflict. Then they had a couple of shots at some drones, shot down a couple of American drones. And again, Trump is vocal but won't engage. Then, and I think where General Soleimani went wrong, because he believed his own propaganda, he thought he was untouchable. He really did. He thought he was so powerful and so important they wouldn't dare strike him. He has his guys in Iraq who are Shia militia that he's paid, trained, and everything else, and who follow his orders, attack a U.S. embassy. Now, right. Ask questions why it's there, what American history, whatever. Nonetheless, it's an existing American embassy, and these guys had a serious go at bashing in the doors, trying to destroy the place. And a couple of Democrats started coming out in the States going, oh, this is Trump's Benghazi moment. It's going to be his moment of failure. And for people who kind of remember, 1979, American embassy was overrun in Iran, next door. That destroyed Jimmy Carter's presidency. So I think Trump's looking at it and he says, I have my guys, my diplomatic staff and my military staff are under attack by a Shia militia, which is controlled by Iran, who we have identified as the world's largest sponsor of terrorism. And General Soleimani, even the government of Canada, says this guy's a terrorist. So I think he says, all right, we're sending Apaches in. We send in a bunch of Marines in Osprey aircraft. And the message to the Shia militia is, if you push one more time in the door, you're going to be machine gunned to death in the street. So the crisis stops right there. Now, Soleimani is either dumb enough or macho enough to fly into Baghdad airport just as all this is happening, and he got smoked. He got killed. He got assassinated. And I think most of the world, myself included, says when you weigh the whole thing, the world's probably a better place because that guy's not in it now. So the next thing we know, we see the Iranians fire some missiles at the Americans, and it was obvious that they were intended to be a show. They weren't actually intended to try and kill anybody. And then the next thing we know, down goes the Iranian airliner. So if you want to look at the immediate crisis starts when Soleimani decides to attack tankers in the Gulf, and then it feeds from that. If you want to take a larger picture, you can blame the Americans for the invasion in 2003, and then you can blame the Shah in 79. You can blame the Israelis for the 73 war, whatever. And you can go right back to the Order of Knights Templar for invading the place, and then you can blame Muhammad for invading Europe anyway after his guys left and went up into Europe. So no matter, you can pick a point in time and then blame whoever you want. But the simple reality is the immediate crisis was caused by Soleimani, and he got killed.
Okay. Now, what should the Canadian government's response be?
Weirdly enough, as much as I'm not exactly a fan of Trudeau, we'll see what he actually does, and I'm not convinced he'll do anything, but he's at least talking the talk. We demand answers. The Iranians have to be held accountable. We want the black boxes.
We got the answer.
Well, we still need the detailed answers, but yeah. And he is actually saying, we have to focus on the victims here, because if you remember the Air India disaster in 1984, the government of the day just decided to do everything it could to throw the victims under the bus and do nothing for them. So at least this time we're putting the victims front and center and saying we need accountability. So he is speaking to speak. He is talking the talk. The question is, will he walk the walk? And I'm less than convinced that he will. But
yeah, what's the walk, though?
Okay, so here we go. Are we actually serious about saying Iran bad? Let's do something about it. The government of Canada on June 12th, 2018, on June 12th, a motion was passed in the House of Commons, put forth by Garnet Genius, who is a Conservative MP, saying we should list the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist group. To everybody's surprise...
Because Soleimani wasn't associated with the military.
No, Soleimani's not actually military at all. People say he's, like Katie Simpson in her CBC report said, a high-ranking military general. Well, he's not military. He's not in the military. He's not accountable to the military. But he was a general. He was a general, but then, you have captains and colonels and police forces.
Right.
So he carries the general name or rank. But the Quds Force, which he was head of, answers to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which answers to the jurist, which is to say he answers to Ayatollah Khamenei right now. So they don't actually work for the military at all. So that's, you can tell when some of the people are reporting on this are actually clueless about what's going on, which is a problem. But anyway, but back to what can Trudeau do? So we had this motion passed in the House of Commons. We're going to list the Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist entity. And much to everybody's surprise, Trudeau put up his hand and said, I support the motion. And I think that's because he'd been beaten up by John Bolton a couple of days before that. But he did actually put up his hand and say, we're going to do it. And I was shocked that Trudeau actually put up his hand and took a stand and said, we're going to do it. Of course, that's been a year and a half and they haven't done it. So I'm looking at this and saying, okay, if Trudeau's actually serious now, the Revolutionary Guard is responsible for the attacks in the Gulf. It looks like it may have been their forces that were at least commanding or that was their forces commanding the embassy raid, and the Iranians wind up shooting down an airliner. Here's a good chance to stand up and say, we're going to list the Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist group. And that's just not name calling, like calling somebody a terrorist. Okay, that's bad. But what actually that does is it's anybody who does business with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard who buys their products, because Revolutionary Guard control about half the economy.
T-shirts, hats.
Cars, defense products, ships, radios, all that kind of stuff. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard controls probably more than half the economy in Iran. So by declaring them to be a terrorist group, anybody that travels to Iran, meets with them, come back, is in fact dealing with a terrorist. Anybody who sends money to any of the businesses in Iran that are owned by the Revolutionary Guard then becomes guilty of financing terrorism.
Even if they're doing it unknowingly.
So the whole point is once you list them as a terrorist group, then the message goes out to everybody that says you're going to do business with Iran, you might start paying attention to who you're dealing with, because you can then be charged with terrorism financing. So it's not just calling somebody a bad name like you're a terrorist. It's actually putting into motion a whole series of financial penalties and restrictions that will hurt the government of Iran, because like I said, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard over the last several years has taken over the automotive manufacturing sector. They've taken over the defense sector. The defense manufacturing sector. They control a good chunk of the oil sector. They control a lot of food distribution trucks and all that kind of stuff. So they're a very powerful group within Iran, and to list them as a terrorist group would actually punish them and hurt them in a way that's actually serious, and it would actually encourage other countries to do the same, which is actually real. So Trudeau could actually do some real things. One, he can actually stand up and say stuff like, beak, 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 we should do something, which is great. He should, and he's doing it, and I support that. But he could actually take some hardcore actions, actually do something. The other thing we could do is start saying...
Who do you think advises him on that stuff?
Okay, here's a problem. This is a serious issue. His brother, Sasha Alexandra, whatever we're supposed to call him, Sasha worked for...
It's, I believe it's Tuesday, so it's Sasha.
Okay, good. So Sasha, his brother, who is actually officially listed as an advisor to Prime Minister Trudeau. I have no problem with that. If he's Prime Minister, he can appoint whoever he wants as an advisor. And if I was Prime Minister, I'd probably have my friends in there talking to me. But so that the fact that he's an advisor...
I don't even take my brother's recommendation on a restaurant. I don't get it.
Alrighty. So here's the problem I've got with Sasha. It's not that he's his brother. The problem with Sasha is he worked for Iranian Press TV, which is the official broadcaster of a theocratic dictatorship.
That's a fact, right, Tom?
Yes, he did. And you can see his films. It's known. The films are out there. He did documentaries for them. And the bottom line of Sasha was he did the documentary work on this and said, Iran should have nukes. The mullahs are a great bunch of guys. We should all just get along. And I thought, wow, that's a theocratic dictatorship, which is the most misogynist force on earth. It is one of the most oppressive forces on earth. They're engaged in multiple conflicts around the region. Complain what you want about everybody else, but these guys are just as bad, if not, and they're in fact worse. The only country in the world that might arguably be worse than Iran is probably North Korea.
Right.
So here you have an advisor to the prime minister, who's also his brother, who works for Iran Press TV. So I've told a bunch of people in the media, and I put this on Twitter, and I put it on Facebook, whatever, and said, look, people should be talking to Sasha because he's an advisor to Trudeau, and he's got contacts in Iran in senior positions. So why isn't Sasha talking to these guys going, hey, what are you doing? What's going on over there? You got to talk to us. So that to me is, you asked me where Trudeau's position on this. Well, Trudeau is the same guy who wants ISIS fighters to return to Canada because they'll be a powerful voice, quote unquote, for the non-existent de-radicalization program. Trudeau is the same guy who, when he was asked about China, said
do you think we should assassinate?
No comment.
Really?
No, no.
Well, that's a comment.
As a military guy who's been to a conflict or whatever, one thing leads to another. You shoot this guy, he shoots you. The other guy shoots the next guy, and the next thing you know, you've got Bosnia. I would never advocate actually shooting somebody in a democratic country. Having said that, I think the Liberal Party itself right now is going through a process where they're pushing him into the background and they're bringing other people forward. The most powerful person in the cabinet right now is Navdeep Bains, who's on multiple committees, and he was the election guy. He was the Liberals' head guy for the election. You've got Gerard Butts, of course, who is the single most powerful unelected official in the country, and then you've got Christy Freeland, who is the deputy prime minister, but I'm reasonably convinced she is the puppet for Gerard Butts. And then the other guy that's really powerful is Omar El-Gabra, who's in favor of Sharia law for Ontario, and who said that he didn't think Hezbollah and Hamas were terrorist groups. He is the parliamentary secretary.
This guy said that publicly?
Before he was a member of parliament, Omar El-Gabra campaigned for Sharia law in Ontario. He was refused entry to America on security grounds for reasons which were never explained. And he was actually on record as saying Hamas and Hezbollah were not terrorist groups.
So during the election, did that come out?
It started to come out, and then Omar El-Gabra put out a statement, said now that he's an elected MP, he's reconsidered the world's position and says, yes, they are in fact terrorist groups. Because, of course, the government of Canada actually lists them as a terrorist group, so he's got to say it. So, I mean, looking at that government...
See, that scares me more than anything else if somebody has those leanings and they get elected.
Yeah, and now he's parliamentary secretary to the prime minister, which means for the political office, not PMO itself, but for the actual political part of the office, the guy who's the gatekeeper, the guy who is the mini minister for the prime minister is the parliamentary secretary, and that's Omar El-Gabra.
Yeah. I hear things all the time from people, and I've never checked it out with you. I will now, but I've heard that there's a number of MPs who have been accused of being Iranian assets in Canada.
We've got, what's his name? I can't think of his name right off. Johari, who's an Iranian guy.
Oh, Majid Johari, yeah. I heard that about him.
So, I mean, can I say with absolute certainty is an Iranian Revolutionary Guards asset? No, I can't. Can I say that I found it incredibly bizarre and possibly, I think, unethical and possibly even illegal that when the Iranian parliament was here and they had members of parliament for the Iranian parliament here, he actually hosted them in his constituency office and whatever, and I'm just like... Dude, these guys represent a theocratic dictatorship of the worst kind. They abuse women, they kill gays. A gay pride parade in Iran is when they put construction cranes into the town square and hang people from them. Yeah, that's a gay pride parade in Iran. So for a government that prides itself on feminism, Iran is like the most misogynist country out there. For a prime minister,
saw that. I thought I saw them issue a statement once saying there were no gays in Iran.
Actually, the Ayatollah said that. They also said there's no prostitution in Iran, but what it means is they have muta marriages, temporary contract marriages for girls who are 9 years old.
Both those things are bad for tourism.
You would think.
Saying you don't have any. Yeah. You know what I mean?
So you look at...
I like to eat where gay people eat.
There you go.
And sometimes commerce is the best sex.
We'll get into that one. But I find it absolutely bizarre that Joe Hardy, who is a member of parliament in Canada, would go out of his way to show respect to and entertain Iranian members of parliament who run one of the cruelest countries on the face of the planet, who stand for the exact opposite of everything we stand for. Yeah. And I mean, he can sit there and complain that, I'm not, favor of Iran, I'm not this, I'm not that. Well, here's an idea. Quit doing that. Quit making statements about this kind of stuff.
So if somebody's a backbencher, and they are an Iranian asset, what are they going to do?
Okay, so here's a question. I mean, what should we do about terrorism? What should we do about extremism? One of my thoughts as a counterterrorism guy, I said, if you want less of something, take the money away. If you want more of something, give it more money. If you're serious about counterterrorism, counter-extremism, follow the money. So let's say that Member of Parliament, Mr. Smith, just to pick a name randomly, happens to be accused of being an asset to another country. Great. Let's look at it. Let's track the money. Where does the money come from? Who does he respond to? How did he get the money? Who pays for his riding association? All that sort of stuff. And the money is foreign in origin. You're gone. Too bad.
Doesn't matter if it's American?
I would say just as bad. I mean, we shouldn't have any foreign money coming into our country to influence our politicians. But, I mean, there would have to be obviously a gradation kind of thing that if some guy's getting paid by America, I'm worried about that. So like the oil pipeline folks, and that bothers me. But if some guy's being paid by Iran, somebody's being paid by Qatar, which is probably the worst of the worst, somebody's being paid by Saudi Arabia, somebody's being paid by Pakistan.
When you say paid by, donations to their campaign.
Donations, counts. Money, influence, media, influence, whatever. So Al Jazeera wrote a puff piece on Omar al-Ghabra that was absolutely nauseating. I mean, puff pieces are great. Journalists do them all the time. I understand that. But he was getting support from Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera had a bunch of their staff quit a few years ago. You didn't see it covered here in Canada. CBC's taken money from Al Jazeera. Toronto Star's taken money from Al Jazeera. But Al Jazeera's had a mass staff walkout where a bunch of staff quit and said, we're not working for the Muslim Brotherhood anymore. We're tired of touting the Muslim Brotherhood line. We're out of here. We're gone.
How could CBC take money from Al Jazeera?
If you remember, they did a puff piece a couple of years ago on Ahmed Syed Khader, Omar Khader's father. Yeah. And it was a very sympathetic look at this. And, you know, poor Omar Khader was a victim and blah, 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 blah. What CBC didn't put too much in the front was that there was a documentary company that actually did like the physical work of the filming and the moving the cameras and all that kind of stuff. CBC did some of it, and then Al Jazeera actually contributed to that money and effort. And same with the Toronto Star. They were part of that whole thing, and they've done pieces or whatever. But they're actually taking money from Al Jazeera. And I go, holy crap, this is a media outfit run by Qatar, which is, again, you know, one of the world's worst governments. Again, it's a theocratic, I was going to say dictatorship. It's a royalty. It's run by a royal family, but it's a theocratic dictatorship.
You know, it's funny when I hear you talk, I want to question it, but I've never read anything that calls you a wacky conspiracy theorist or anything.
No, I mean, I grew up in kind of a situation where in the aviation world, if you make mistakes, people die. Things have to be done right. You have to be accurate. You have to know what you're doing. Right. And you can't just make stuff up as you go along because you get killed. On the technical side, on the actual physical flying side, you have to be accountable. You have to know what you're doing. You have to do stuff right or people get killed, including yourself. When I moved into the intelligence side as a junior intelligence officer, they put you into some rather difficult positions where you're briefing the Deputy Minister of Defense and you're briefing the Chief of Defense Staff, who happens to be a 4-star. And surprisingly enough, they don't pick these guys off park benches. Some of them actually know what they're doing. Right. You know, I did a little bit of work with Madam Justice Arbour. I did some stuff with Madam Justice Del Ponte at the War Crimes Tribunal. They didn't pick her off a park bench either. So you're actually faced as a junior officer looking at 4-star generals. Like in Yugoslavia, we did a lot of briefings for the force commander, who was a French 4-star, who was known to have zero sense of humor. These guys can get you fired. They can get you jailed. If things go wrong and they make a decision based on your information, people get killed, you're gone. So you're actually forced into a situation where you have to be
triple check,
careful of your words. You have to express things in a very clear manner. If you believe something, then it better be true. If you say, you know, we have information that says this, but we can't prove it, that's fine. But if you say, well, this is what's happening and it's wrong, people get killed, you're in a lot of trouble.
Anybody ever sued you?
I've been sued twice, one ongoing lawsuit right now. I would say it's a matter of lawfare. So there is a whole process going on in Canada right now, mostly by Islamists who, the expression is, the process is the punishment. They want you to be quiet about talking what they're talking about. Yeah. They don't want you to speak, so they just sue you almost randomly. So they tie you up. It causes it causes court costs, it costs money, it costs time, whatever. And that's the whole idea, is to shut you up. M103, the Anti-Islamophobia Act, that's exactly what that is. That is lawfare to silence Canadians. Justin Trudeau suing Andrew Scheer. I just looked at it and thought, wow, the Islamicists must be really close to the center of power now because they're using that tactic. Why would they sue Andrew Scheer? The process itself is the punishment. They want you to think about what you're saying. They want you to remain silent. Right now, we've got a situation where what's his face from the rebel there, Ezra Levant, is being sued by the feds, by the Trudeau government for a book he wrote. And the reality is, at the end of the day, that's going nowhere. no court in Canada, I don't think, I hope not, is ever going to convict Ezra Levant.
Kind of shoots himself in the foot, though. He's entertaining as hell.
He does on occasion, but I mean, publishing a book called The Libranos instead of The Sopranos was kind of funny. A lot of it's there. To question the prime minister in a democratic country is perfectly fair game, especially this guy who said stuff like, we want ISIS fighters to come back to Canada. But in this case, the process is the punishment. They're going to punish Levant by tying him up in court, by making him spend money, draining his energy, fighting all this stuff. So yeah, it's the legal system here in Canada is being used by a number of folks to just silence discussion. And that's what's particularly disturbing about M103. If that was just a motion that said, you can't call people this or that and you can get in trouble for doing it and blah, 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 I'd have been fine with it. If they'd specifically said you can't go after Muslims and pick them out as a specific group like gays or blacks or Jews or whatever, I'd have no problem with it. But they had to get the word Islamophobia in there because it's a fake concept created by the Islamicists to propose that they are the perpetual victim of everything that goes wrong. It is the cult of perpetual victimhood, and that's my problem with it.
I think the biggest problem with a lot of stuff that goes on in this country is a lot of people are afraid to speak up one way or the other because they're afraid they're going to be accused of being something they may or may not be.
This is the whole process of political correctness.
Like you heard this silent majority thing.
Yeah, I think actually my sort of feeling on this...
In Canada, you could just say majority, I guess.
Yeah. My sort of feeling on this is, I started seeing this stuff when I was at York University in 1989, 1990, this whole business of, we didn't call it virtue signaling at the time, but it was political correctness. The people go around the table and each one has to demonstrate how morally superior they are to everybody else because they hate this or they hate that or whatever. And I used to think, like, what is this all about? I was kind of naive. I didn't know. But now I realize this was political correctness had infected the system badly already. So now we're to a point where I think in the year 2019 and the year 2020, I think we're reaching peak stupidity. People are eating Tide Pods, men can have babies, we need menstrual products in men's washrooms, men can menstruate and all this sort of stuff. And we have to accept this, even though it totally violates any concept of science.
There's no tampons for sale in men's washrooms.
There are in some universities now, and now some school, I think in the U.S. is, saying, we have to, and I think...
to me, that's probably just a cash grab from Johnson & Johnson. That can't be.
Some guy just did a thing, I think it was the Independent, I can't remember the name, but it was a mainstream newspaper doing an article, an interview with
Men don't menstruate, we just yell at somebody.
Yeah, well,
at the gas station. We yell at the guy behind the counter for the price of gas. Like it's an episode of Undercover Boss.
Yeah.
But
so they just did an interview with this guy about how difficult it is for men who menstruate, because when you go to the Shoppers Drug Mart or whatever, they only have women's menstrual products. They don't have men's menstrual product. And they're like with pink flowers and stuff. And he's really offended by this. And how do men get proper...
I don't want to gross anybody out, but that's got to be one tiny tampon. Before I'm even going to try it.
I'm not going there.
Okay.
But my hope in all of this is things have gotten so stupid right now that I think the pendulum has swung as far out as it can on the stupid side. And what we're seeing right now is the pendulum is out as far as it's going to get. It's vibrating and it's going to start coming back towards the less...
Yeah, but who's going to push it back?
You and I are sitting here doing this in spite of the fact we're talking about stuff we're not supposed to, so we're starting to push back. I think a lot of people are just tired of being told what they can think. The Don Cherry thing, I think, may have been, when people look back 10 years from now, they may have said that might have been the moment when there was a bit of vibration. The other two moments for me, my two heroes right now are Ricky Gervais and Dave Chappelle. Yeah. Ricky Gervais stood up at the Golden Globes. I don't watch the Globes. Who does? I don't know. I don't watch the Oscars because I don't care. But the next morning when I saw this thing that Ricky Gervais told these guys a new one, I said, okay, I'm going to watch this. And I sat there like blowing bubbles in my coffee. It was just hilarious to watch this guy take every politically correct icon and shred it right in front of them. And the looks on their faces was amazing. And when he said, you people spend less time in school than Greta Thunberg, I just howled out loud. I was suffocating. I was laughing so hard. And then Dave Chappelle did the same thing a couple of months ago.
I would have to say Dave Chappelle because I would say 85% of people after Sticks and Stones weren't good for you.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I thought was really fascinating.
But he covered his ass politically too. If you stayed around till the end, the transgender that he was talking about earlier in the act was sitting at the bar. He walked over. They became friends. So that's called ass covering.
Yeah.
It's after the fact, but it's called ass covering.
Yeah. But I just love the fact that they did it. What really struck me as interesting with Dave Chappelle was the next day or the day after, whatever, it was a couple of days later, Eddie Murphy came out and said, I'm going back on the college circuit. And I just thought, because I liked Eddie Murphy years ago.
No, he's not going back on the college circuit. He's going back on the stand-up circuit.
Okay, but whatever it was.
Nobody's going on the college circuit.
Well, we'll see. I mean, hopefully they will. But
when Jerry Seinfeld is afraid to go on the college circuit, that's a message to everybody.
Okay, from the intelligence point of view, we call that indicators and warnings. How do you know something is going wrong? And a guy like Jerry Seinfeld won't go on the market or in the college circuit.
The guy who came up with the chicks and the checks.
Yep.
That guy's afraid to go on a university. That's the most offensive thing he ever did.
Yeah. When Eddie Murphy offended everybody. But I mean, in fairness, Eddie Murphy offends everybody pretty equally. But when Eddie Murphy and guys like Seinfeld won't go on the college circuit or won't go on the stand-up circuit, that is a sign our society is badly diseased. So when Dave Chappelle did that thing, I just thought it was great in the sense that he just took water and threw it in people's faces. And then Ricky Gervais just stood there and just like, oh my God.
You know, the funny thing, people talk about courage when it comes to stuff like that. And somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago, geez, why doesn't somebody do it here? It kind of helps when you got $100 million in the bank.
It helps a lot when you're in a position of power. So what I really thought was fascinating about Gervais, though, is he looked at people and he said something about, that movie, The Bird Box, or whatever it was called, and it's a movie where everybody survives by not watching what the boss is doing. He goes, a lot like working for Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
And they're all offended. And I thought, what strikes me and what hurts me with these people is the sheer stinking hypocrisy of what they're doing. So people say, well, you don't understand. She's a young actress. She's vulnerable. If she wants a career, she's subject to all this sort of stuff. And it's like, hello, Meryl Streep. When after you got your third friggin' Oscar, now you speak out. You have power. You have 3 Oscars on a shelf, or 4 or 5, whatever the hell she's got. Now you have power. Now you have clout. If you actually say you're a feminist and you're actually offended by this crap, get up and say something. Ricky Gervais is in
I don't think
position.
anybody dropped their jaw over stuff going on in Hollywood.
Well, I mean, that's
when it came to the Weinstein stuff and everything. I mean, it goes all the way back to the casting couch, Louis B. Mayer, even before that.
Everybody knows it's going on, and all of a sudden they're offended by it. It's like, well, if you were so offended by it, when you had power, why didn't you do something? So screw you, Hollywood actors who refuse to speak out when you did have the power. Yeah. When you have no power, I get why you don't speak out, because you get killed or you get pushed to the side. I'm at a certain point in my life now where I don't work for anybody. I don't have I'm not a government employee anymore. I don't have a full-time employer or whatever. So I can afford to be a little more outspoken than some kid who's 22.
Right. Plus you have a sphere of reference.
Yeah, and I can...
And speaking of sphere of reference, I don't want to hear people calling other people Nazis.
The only people...
When they haven't displayed anything remotely similar to that heinous...
Yeah. If they're out there doing the Zig Heil thing, great, they're Nazis. But, so a good example of that is Gerard Butts, who, when he was commenting, I think it was Wizard Levant or whatever it was, I forget now, it doesn't matter. But he was saying, well, this is typical of the alt-right and the neo-Nazis, whatever. And it's like, hang on just a second. The Prime Minister's advisor, who is in fact the stand-in for the Prime Minister, has just called a bunch of Canadians Nazis. Yeah.
Somebody made the argument to me, well, Ezra Levant's Jewish, so you can't call him a Nazi. Well, you know what? Plantation owners slept with, black slaves.
But this idea, I mean, right now, we have got to a point in our country where our own...
Not that I think he is, by the way. I don't.
Yeah. But yeah, neither do I. I mean, he's a little out there, but, he's not a Nazi. But we've got to a point in our country now where the government is telling you what you can and can't say. And if you offend the government... Yeah, because they were actually mocking Trudeau. That's what that was all about. They were mocking Trudeau for his people kind thing, which was absolute crap. We don't use the word people kind. And what got Ezra Levant in trouble is he went into a huge database of media and said in the previous, 10 years, he could find the word used 8 times. And he goes, people don't use the word people kind. It's stupid. And then that's when Gerard Butts turned around and called him a Nazi. And it's just like, wow, the most senior advisor, unelected and corrupt Gerard Butts tells Canadians they're Nazis because they criticize the Prime Minister when the Prime Minister is overtly being stupid.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, and he got away with it, which is the part that's bad.
Are we gonna get past all this?
Okay, so the question, actually, if you want to get a little longer, will Western values survive? Will democracy survive?
Jeez, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Will Judeo-Christian values continue to dominate, or are we going to turn into a progressive society, quote-unquote progressive, in other words, a Marxist society? My hope is there's
progressive is Marxist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all these people that call themselves progressives, in fact, they're closet Marxists.
Okay.
A few of them are Trotskyites, but whatever. But realistically speaking, as I mentioned earlier, I think the pendulum is swinging out We've got as stupid as I think we can possibly get, and I could be wrong. I mean, what did Einstein say? There's two things that are limitless. One is the universe, and the other is human stupidity. And he wasn't too sure about the human stupidity one. But I'm hoping that we've got to the peak stupid. I'm hoping guys like Dave Chappelle, Ricky Gervais are going to lead us back to a point where we can start having discussions again, and that we can have rational discussions in public with people on hard issues. I do an interview every now and again with a guy in the United Kingdom who is a self-avowed champagne socialist.
I've seen him.
We agree on nothing, absolutely nothing. We agree on, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. We do agree on one thing. We believe in public discussion and freedom of speech. So he and I go back and forth on a bunch of issues, and we laugh at each other because we're just so far apart on so many issues, but we keep doing it because it's important. And I think
that's called maturity.
It's important. Yeah, I think there is maturity. It is realizing the idea that free speech, why did free speech get invented? People tend to forget this. People say, oh, you shouldn't be allowed to use free speech. When you see free speech, that means you're a Nazi who wants to offend people. And it's like, hang on, just back up a bit here. The reason we have free speech, the reason it's important, the reason it's the First Amendment, not the Second Amendment in America, is that if you want a civil society which can go day to day to day without being violent, you need to bring the pressure out of the system somehow. So people need to discuss. They need to have ideas. We should do it this way. We should do it that way. These people should. Those people shouldn't. Whatever. We need to go back and forth, and we need to come to a solution. And we need to do it. When you cancel free speech, when you see people can't talk anymore, what you do is you put pressure back in the system. People are angry, but they can't say anything. So the pressure builds, and eventually Group A starts killing Group B. So what we've got now is a situation where the free speech whiners, the bedwetters or whatever, saying, oh no, free speech means you're a Nazi. It's like, you guys are ahistorical. You have no clue what's going on in your own life.
That's what I meant earlier. I mean, anybody who throws terms around.
Yeah.
Regardless of their age.
And by the way, if you're going to call somebody a Nazi, let's remember that there was a certain context for that. And there's nothing wrong with calling somebody a Nazi if they are this, that, and whatever. But to call somebody a Nazi is very serious. Those guys were like a very serious group of guys who killed a lot of people with a very specific ideology.
Interesting to see somebody go to the Human Rights Commission after being called one.
Yeah, it's like, wow. So the fact our human rights commissions here in Canada, I think one of our greatest weaknesses are some human rights commissions, where you can kind of make up your own offense, go complain that you're being offended, and then get away with it. And why do you get away with it? Oh, because I was offended. Here's an idea. I don't care if you're offended. It's free speech. It is not your right to be not offended. Because if the standard for free speech now is you can't say it because somebody's offended, then you can't say anything. Because no matter what you say, you're going to offend somebody. I had a really good hamburger the other day. Oh, I'm a vegan. I'm triggered by you. You shouldn't be able to say a hamburger. We'll take a hike.
Okay, you're dissing the left way too much. You're not dissing the right enough.
Oh, hey, I got no. Actually, here's another thing I went after. Christy Freeland. She goes to the United Nations and says white supremacy is the greatest threat to the Western world, and it's the greatest threat to Canada, whatever. So I got onto the public safety website and said, how many white power groups, how many neo-Nazi groups have we listed in Canada? Answer, 0.
Yeah.
Now, here's my take on the white supremacy thing. These guys worry me. I've run into a few of them. I know who they are. I've talked with them, and I'll actually talk to some of these guys. They frighten me, and they scare the hell out of me. But here's the thing in Canada right now. They're not a threat in Canada. Why? Because A, they don't have a grievance narrative. In order to run a decent terrorist group or a neo-Nazi group or a...
you got to have some brains in there.
Yeah,
they need to bring in... They need to bring in a lefty.
Yeah,
one guy.
If you want to run a decent kind of white supremacy group or a neo-Nazi group or a decent terrorist group or a Antifa group or something, you need a grievance narrative. They don't have one. What's your grievance about being white in Canada? Oh, my life's too tough. Well, screw off. Go somewhere else. The other thing you need is money, and they ain't got that. You need a good theme song and some good theme colors. They haven't got that. And most importantly, is a charismatic leader. And most of the neo-Nazis who's popped up in Canada over the last few years have been quite literally morons.
Yeah.
And if you remember, the last bomb set off in Canada by a neo-Nazi was one neo-Nazi blowing up another neo-Nazi in Calgary, to which I kind of went, yeah, okay, whatever. It's kind of like watching Hell's Angels take on the Rock Machine. It's kind of like, you want to tear each other apart, have at it.
Yeah, who do you root for? Who cares?
So here's my take, though. Here's the problem. We are being told you can't say this, you can't say that. Islamophobia, it's phobias for everything now. You're transphobic, you're misogynistic, you're a white power guy because you said something, whatever. The pressure is building. People are getting very angry. You're seeing this in Europe. You're seeing it in Poland, Germany, Austria. You're seeing it in France. You're seeing it in Sweden. That the white power groups, the resistance groups, the whatever are starting to build, and they're starting to have influence, and it's bad. So here's my take on it. Right now, they're not.
You know, the problem in those countries has always been.
Well, there's.
if you can drive from Holland to Germany in 4 or 5 hours, There's not enough land. And that's the big problem with Europe.
Too much history, not enough geography.
Yeah.
It's a big issue.
Yeah.
So here's my take on this thing. Are white power groups a threat right now in Canada? No, they're not. Should we be panicking? No, we shouldn't. Are Nazis a threat? No, they're not. But, and I put a huge caveat here. I say if we get into another recession, which is serious, there will be a grievance narrative created which says the problem with Canada is we took too many migrants, it's destroyed our economy, et cetera, et cetera. So that grievance narrative will begin. Once a grievance
narrative... Well, that's
narrative,
how the Nazis started, right?
Yeah. Once you get a grievance narrative building, what you need then is some money and you need a charismatic leader. So far, I haven't seen the charismatic leader. The money will come. That's not a problem. But if the right wing, extreme right wing, white supremacist, neo-Nazi, whatever you want to call them, if those folks get a charismatic leader and a grievance narrative, and then I would say we have the potential, we have a very latent threat that could come from this in the midst of a depression. So when people say, is white supremacy a threat? I say no. When they say, well, you must be a Nazi, whatever, I say, no, I'm not a Nazi. I know who these guys are. I know what's going on. But I would argue if we get into a depression, then that will become an issue and it's going to be bad.
So you're saying Maxime Bernier had no charisma? I'm just trying to piss somebody off. We both know.
Yeah, you did that. But here's the other thing. When I watch these Antifa idiots, I've run into these guys in the past when I worked for the RCMP and they were doing like G7, G8 stuff. And these are kids that, can't get out of bed in the morning. They live in mummy's basements, but they love to put on black hoodies and go threaten people when they're in a group. I think they're kind of funny, but whatever. But
by the way, if they're in masks and black hoodies, we don't know how old they are.
Yeah. But here's the kind of thing that's going on, though. If you go back and look at Italy and Germany, where the fascists came from, they came from the brown shirts and the black shirts. And when Reagan said this, he got roundly criticized, and it's Reagan saying, so it's an issue. But he said, if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come from the left. And the reality is fascism in Nazi Germany and fascism in fascist Italy came from the left. And only once they got into power did it do this sort of nationalist hardcore thing or whatever. Yeah. So when I see the Antifa guys doing their brown shirt thing, or black, in this case, black shirt, that actually kind of worries me. But here's the thing: most of those.
What's with the Reagan disc? I expected to see a Reagan bobblehead on the dash of your car. Which is a lot like a real Reagan.
We'll finish this thought, then we'll go back to Reagan.
All right.
Here's my thing. Most of them Antifa guys, I think, are great when they're a group of 10. They can beat up old ladies, like the Antifa guy here in Toronto that yelled and screamed at that 90-year-old lady because she was going to a Maxine Bernier thing. That's what Antifa is about, a group of people who terrorize old ladies. But here's the thing. On the right wing, if we get right-wing guys going, if you get the Freedom on the Land guys going, if you get the neo-Nazis going, they're named Billy Joe Jim Bob. They got a Ford F-250 and they got an AR-15. If you have 5 of those guys run into Antifa, I can tell you what's going to go there, and it won't be good.
Yeah.
So this is why we need to get rid of identitarian politics. This is why we need free speech. We got to start talking about this stuff. We got to get out there and get going on it. Because if we don't, when we get into a serious recession, I believe that America is very prone to violence. It's going to happen, and Canada is moving that direction, and it's not good.
I do agree with you that Canada might be moving toward violence. I'm seeing it every day.
Stuff I wouldn't have thought of 10 years ago. I'm thinking about. I'm an establishment person. I mean, for God's sakes, born here, went to school here, joined the military, served overseas. I'm a veteran, having served in a combat zone. I've worked for the Privy Council office. I worked for Citizenship and Immigration. I worked for 6 years for the RCMP National Security Section as a civilian contractor. I worked for the International War Crimes Tribunal. For God's sakes, I'm a product of the system.
Other than the molesting thing, you've been moved around more than a priest.
But here's the thing. I'm a system guy. And I'm looking around at the government right now, and my own government scares me as much as a bunch of other stuff. And I'm a systems guy. And I mean, I'm privileged in that sense that I worked hard, I got a degree, I've traveled the world, all that sort of stuff. I come from what one might politely call a modest background. But I've been lucky in the sense that I've worked hard at a bunch of things and done reasonably well. And I've seen a lot of stuff, been a lot of places. I worked in Singapore, I worked in the Netherlands, been to a war, which wasn't so great, but did a lot of search and rescue work, which is really like a positive experience, and then lost a few. But
okay, back to the Reagan diss.
Okay, so Reagan...
Don't think I didn't catch it.
Okay, so here's my take on Reagan. He's an actor. B actor.
He's actually dead.
He had 2 qualities. Yeah, he is. But he had 2 good qualities that I thought of. One, I remember he used to speak on TV, and while he was speaking, I would find myself leaning into the TV. Like when they called him the great communicator,
they weren't kidding.
They weren't kidding. He's actually good at it. But then that's what he was trained to do. But the thing about Reagan that I thought was good, the good thing about Reagan was he knew he wasn't that bright, because he wasn't. He was not like a towering intellectual guy. But Reagan had one redeeming quality, which I thought was great. He knew he wasn't that bright, and he knew he needed to have good guys around him to do stuff. And by the way, that's the hallmark of a good leader. No leader can do everything. No leader can know everything. It's physically, intellectually impossible to know everything. So we need Einstein as a leader. No, we don't. We need a good leader who can set the direction, set the pace, and then he needs guys around him or women around him who can get stuff done. Reagan was really good at picking people, saying, look, this whole economy thing, it's kind of like, wow, I don't really get it. Like, this money thing is so complicated. So you're going to be my guy. I need you to get out there and do it. And then he would tell them, he'd say, look, go out and do your thing. If everything's going good, just keep doing it. Don't call me. But if somebody stops you from doing what you need to do, call me up and I'll have that guy taken out. And that, by the way, is the same way the Marine Corps works. You put your people out in the right positions, you back them, you train them, and then you tell them, go do your thing. And if you can't do your thing, you come back and tell me why, and I'll get rid of it. That was the strength of Reagan, was he was an actual leader. Yeah. He may not have been the brightest guy in the world. He may not have had the broadest experience in the world, but he was smart enough to know that, and he was smart enough to bring good people into his inner circle, empower them to get the job done, and then he'd go back and he'd have a beer. Well, I don't know what he drank, but he'd sit back and let his guys go out and do the stuff. And then when they needed something done, he'd phone up and say, yeah, look, it's Ronnie here. I had my guy over there the other day, and he says, you're not helping him out. Why aren't you helping him out? And of course, if you're the head of some bureaucracy, you get the president phone up. What do you do the next day?
Probably for the time smart enough to take his marching orders from the guys he hired.
Yeah. So, and that's the mark of a true leader. So, Reagan was no intellectual towering genius, but he had that leadership thing wired, and that's a good thing.
All right,
we could use a few people like that here right now, by the way.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Cheers. It's been fun.
You're listening to U2 with Mike Bullard on the Possibly Correct Network. The king of spontaneity, former host of Open Mic with Mike Bullard, legendary comedian Mike Bullard is back. Stay up to date with the latest from Mike and the podcast by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Minds.com and Gab, or navigate to www.u2mikebullard.com. While you're online, please show your support for the show by leaving a review on your favourite media player. You can check out all of our podcasts by following Possibly Correct on Minds.com.